In this video for Computer Science 9618, we're going to take a look at all the string methods you need to know to be successful, and then we'll code them out in VB.net so you can see them in action. The very first one you need to know is left, and that uses the keyword left. It's formatted as left with a set of parentheses that accepts two arguments, string and length. But what is that string argument? Well, it identifies the string, a set of quotation marks, or a string variable that we're going to be working with. When we talk about length, that's the number of characters we want, starting from the left-hand side of the string that we identified as that first argument. Now, each character in the string has an index position just like an array does. There's one huge difference though, and this you want to make note of. The starting index position is 1, not 0. This means the very first character in the string, that's going to be index position 1. The second character is going to be index position 2, and so on. So let's take a look, swinging over to VB.net and coding this out. All right, so we're over in VB.net. We're going to simply dimensionalize phrase as string. You can create any string you want, and we'll put computer science inside that string so we can see how left works. Now, C starts at index 1. The O starts at index 2, and so on. So if I want to see how this works, I can simply, I'm going to output it so we can see it. I type in the keyword left. The first thing I need to do is I need to identify what string am I working with. Well, my string is phrase. And how far left or how many characters do I want starting from the left? Let's say I want to output comp. Well, that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 4 characters that I want to output. That'll output the word comp. We run it, and we can see that I'll output COMP because C is 1, O is 2, M is 3, and P is 4. So we see build succeeded, and finally we have it, and there it is, COMP. Now you might be saying, well, it has a space there. Well, that's just because I highlighted everything after it. Let's say we want to output just the word computer. Well, that's going to be C at 1, O at 2, M at 3, P at 4, U at 5, T at 6, E at 7, R at 8. So I'm just going to change this to 8, and I'll output the word computer because it's counting from the left of computer science, outputting how many characters we want. So again, the string we're working with and how many characters we want starting from the left-hand side. And remember, it starts at index position 1, not 0. And then we have the string method right. Uses the keyword right. The format is the same as left, except for this time we're using the keyword right. We have the string argument. We have the length argument. The string argument is exactly the same. We're simply identifying the string or string variable that we're going to be working with. Length, same thing, number of characters we want, but this time starting from the right-hand side of the string. The starting index position is 1, not 0. So again, same starting position index, this time though from the right-hand side. Let's take a look at how this works in VB.net using our same example, computer science. So now we're using that same phrase. We're using the keyword right this time. And notice this lowercase e right here is going to be index position 1, while the C is going to be index position 2, and so on. If I want to print this word science, well, that has a length of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I have a 7 there. Again, the string we're working with, phrase, and the length we want. Now, when it prints it out from the right-hand position, it does not print it backwards. It's not going to print ECNEICS. It doesn't do that. So let's go ahead and run it so we can see that it prints science. So there it is, science. But what about this space? What if I go a length of 8? What if I include that space? Will it print that space? Well, space is part of the ASCII code set. It is considered a character, so we'll print that space. What if I go beyond the length of the string? What if I go 99? Is that going to allow us to do it? and it will run without crashing. You'll see it just prints the entire string, computer science. There's really no reason to do that if you're using right. You probably don't want the whole string, but I'm just showing you, even if you go outside the bounds of the length, it will still work. It'll catch that exception, print the rest of the string, and not actually crash. So you don't have to worry about staying in bounds like you do with an array. Let's swing back over and take a look at the next method we need to know. Then we can get the length of a string. It uses the keyword length. Now it is part of the string class. We access it using a period. So we take our string or our variable, we simply do dot length. Now in VB, you can do with or without parentheses, and it will do the same thing. It simply counts all the characters in a string. But what counts as a character? What does it count specifically? Any alphanumeric character and all non-alphanumeric characters. Pretty much, if you can put it on the screen, it's going to count as a character. So alphanumeric means capital A to Z, lowercase a to Z, 0 to 9, all the punctuation, all the spaces. Now, when we're doing spaces, if I have a single space, that counts as a single character. If I have two spaces right next to one another, those count as two separate characters. We also want to include all the math symbols, plus, equals, subtract, multiplication, all special characters, which is across the top row of the keyboard. Pretty much, if you can put it on the screen, it's going to be part of the length. So let's take a look at how to get the length of a string and why we would need to do that. So we're going to use the same phrase, computer science, and when we want to get the length of the string, we do whatever the string is, dot length. So let's go ahead and run it, and then we'll count, and it will be correct. The computer can count. It says it's 16 characters long. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The space is 9. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now you may be saying, well, I can simply count a string. Why do they have a dot length method if I can simply count it? Well, let's say you're taking input of a string. You don't know what the user is going to type in, and you may need to do something with a for loop. Maybe you have to do for I equals 1, 2, and you got to go the length of the string, but you don't know what the user is going to input. So you can simply do phrase dot length, and you can do phrase dot length minus 1, depending if you're starting at index 0. Usually if you're going to start at index 1, you're going to go to phrase dot length. If you're going to start at index 0, you're going to do phrase dot length minus 1 so you don't go outside the bounds. We'll talk about that more shortly. But let's go ahead and take a look at the next method. And let's talk about mid. It uses the keyword mid, and it can accept 2 or 3 arguments. So we'll go over how the 2 argument version works, then do the 3 arguments, and then program it out. So if we're using 2 arguments, we're going to do mid, our string, and then the starting point. It doesn't mean the middle. We have the left, we have right, and we have mid, which means we can start wherever we want to. What is this string argument? Well, we simply identify the string or the string variable that we're working with. The starting point is where in the string we want to start. Now, it starts here wherever we want, and it prints the remainder of the string all the way to the end. Again, the first character in the string is referred to as position 1, not position 0 or index 0. Mid can also take 3 arguments. And if we have 3 arguments, the format is keyword mid. We have our string, we have the starting point, and then we have the length. String, same thing it's been so far. We're simply identifying the string or the string variable that we are working with. The starting point, same thing as 2 arguments. It's where in the string we want to start. It starts here and prints the length that we put in as the 3rd argument. It identifies how many characters to be printed from that starting point inclusive. So we are including that start point, and then we're counting how many characters we want to go from that starting point. Whatever our starting point is, that counts as character 1. It's not what index position you want to go up to. It includes the start position and the end position. So it's not going up to that character, it's actually the actual length of that character. So let's take a look at both of these in VB.NET so we can see them in action. So let's do mid with 2 arguments. So I'm going to do console.writeLine. I'm going to do mid, identify the string I'm working with, which is phrase, and then I want to do my starting point. Where am I starting from? So let's say I want to print the word science. Well, I know that starts at position 10. So if I run this, this should output the word science, because I believe that space is at index position 9. And it was. So the space is at index position 9, but I want to start at position 10, and it prints the rest of the string. If I throw this into my loop here, my for loop, where do I want to start? I want to start at position I. So we can see how this works. It'll start at the C, and it'll print the word computer science. Then I will increment to 2. It'll start at that O and then print computer science, and it'll start subtracting 1 letter at a time, not because it's really subtracting a letter, but because we're moving the start position. For example, when I is 1, let me bring my program back up here. When I is 1, it's going to start at that C. When I is 2, it starts at the O. When I is 3, it starts at the M. But notice it prints that first letter and then prints the rest of the string. And because we go all the way through the length, it even prints the very last letter all by itself. But what about 3 arguments? You may have seen this dim letter as character, and you may be saying, what is that for? Well, that's where this comes in. Let's say I want to isolate each letter of my string phrase. Let's say I want to isolate each letter and I want to output it on its own line. So I'm going to do letter equals mid. I'm working with phrase. What is my starting point? I'm going to start at character I. I want to get the first character. Then I want to get the second one. Then the third one. What is the length of the characters I'm getting when I start at that position? I'm getting 1 because I'm isolating each character. Then we can output letter, and this will allow us to see that it actually isolates each character. So we should see computer science going straight down. And we do. We see computer, we see the space, and we have science. So it prints it going straight down. And this is the formula to isolate individual letters. If you ever need to isolate a letter for any reason, this is what you're going to be using if you use mid. Let's take a look at the next string method. Then we have substring, very similar to mid, but a little different. It uses the function of the string class, so you got to use .substring, while mid, you don't have to use something .mid. You can just use that keyword. There's the 1 argument version of substring. This is formatted as your variable or your string, .substring, and then your starting position. But there's also a 2 argument version of substring. You take your variable or your string, .substring, you indicate the start position and then the length that you want to go. When we say the starting position, we're saying what position index to start from, and it will print the remainder of the string from the start index position. That is for the 1 argument version. If you have the 2 argument version, the start position is where you want to start. The length is the number of characters we want starting from the start index position. Now, the starting index position is 0, not 1, because it's part of the string class. So it doesn't start at position 1. 0 is its start position. So let's take a look at how this works using our same example so we can see how it's a little different. So now we're taking a look at substring. Let's take a look at the 1 argument version first. The reason it only has 1 argument in one of the versions is because you've already identified the string you're working with. The string is calling the substring method. We're getting a substring of our string phrase, which is holding the word computer science. If I start at position 0, it will print this entire word. If I start at position 1 though, it will actually move to the second letter, which is the letter O. So if we run this, it will print computer science followed by computer science. So here we see it does start at index 0. When we start at index 1, it actually starts at the second letter. So it works almost like mid. The difference is substring starts at index 0, or 0 is its starting letter, while mid has a starting letter of 1. Let's go ahead and let's use this for loop and isolate each letter. So this is how we did it for mid. You can see it right above there. I'm going to comment that out. If I want to use substring, I can do something very similar. I'm going to do letter phrase.substring because that's the string I want to get a substring of. And this is a 2-argument version. I need to say, okay, where am I starting? I want to start at index I or letter I, and then I want 1 character. Now, this is very important. When you're using a for loop and you're using substring, you don't start at 1 because that will actually print the second letter. You're going to start at index 0. You can't go to phrase.length. The length of this is 16. But because I've started at index 0, the letter E, it's not in position 15. It's not in position 16. It's in position 15. If I run this, it will crash, because I didn't do phrase.length -1. So let's take a look, and it goes beyond the bounds, and you can see right here, we have an unhandled exception. So you can see index and length must refer to a location within the string. So when you're using substring, it's 0 to phrase.length -1. Now when I run it, it will isolate, it'll print each letter, and it will not crash. See, you can see computer science, and then it didn't throw any exception. A lot of times what students will do is they'll do this. They'll run their program, and they'll say, well, my program's crashing, but it's okay because it outputted what it's supposed to. No, it's not okay. We don't just have an error to have an error or say, yep, it works. We need to understand our code, so it's always -1. Again, that's because we're starting at position 0, and if we count all the way to E, that's going to be at position 15, not position 16, which is why we go to phrase.length -1. Let's take a look at the last method that we need to know. Before we do our last method, I went ahead and made this chart. You may want to take a picture of this. That way you can review right before you walk into the exam, just in case you're trying to remember, because exams are definitely stressful, and it can be a little hard to remember, and you're trying to recall everything right before the exam or even during the middle of the exam. So having a picture of this may allow you to review right before you walk in. So we have mid and we have substring. Mid has a start index of 1. Substring, we said 0, and we saw that. The method arguments. Mid has 2 or 3 because you have to identify the string you're working with. Substring has 1 or 2 because you don't need to identify the string you're working with as one of the arguments, because it's the actual string itself that's calling the dot substring. So how do we use it? Well, mid, it's a global function. You just use the keyword mid. You don't have to do string.mid. Function is part of the string class. The substring is a function part of the string class. You have to use string.substring. That second S does not need to be capital. Are there any errors? With mid, no, you can go beyond the length of the string. The program will not throw an exception. You can type in 1000 if you want, and it will print just fine. It doesn't throw an exception. You're allowed to go beyond the end of the string. It's only going to print to the end, but it's not going to throw an exception. And then down here, will it throw an error? Yes, it cannot go beyond the length of the string. We just saw that. The program will throw an exception. Now let's take a look at our last one, index of. So it uses the function of the string class.indexOf. One argument version is formatted as your variable or your string .indexOf, and then the character or characters that you are searching for. The 2-argument version, formatted the same way, it just has a second argument, and that's the starting position. So search looks for the first occurrence, and it's the first occurrence of a character or characters of a string and returns the position index where it begins or where it was found. The start is the starting position index of where to start in the string. Now, because it's part of the string class, because we're doing .indexOf, it starts at position 0, not position 1. So let's swing over to VB.net. Let's take a look at how IndexOf works with one argument and then two. So over here, I've changed the string to herb computer science, and we're going to use IndexOf. So maybe I'm looking for that first space here. So I do console.writeLine. I'm going to do phrase.indexOf. And let's see, I'm looking for that space. That should print 3 because E is 0, R is 1, B is 2, and then the space is position 3. So when I run it, it's going to return that it's found at position 3. Notice it only does a single number because it will do where the first occurrence, not where all occurrences are. But what if I'm looking for a whole word? What if I'm looking for computer? Does that print the one at the beginning? Or does it print the position at the end? It's going to print the one at the beginning. So we know if the space is position 3, this should return position 4 because it's where it actually begins at. So here you can see computer is position 4. So it's where the character or characters actually begins. Now, if we're looking at the 2-argument version, let's say I'm looking for a space and I'm looking for a 2-argument version. Let's say, I want to look for that second space. Well, I know it's somewhere after character 6. Well, what does that print? Well, we know this is 3, computer is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's going to print 12. It doesn't start the count position over. It will actually still print the original position it's in, which is indeed 12. So that is how IndexOf works. But what if I want to look for this second space? How do I do that? Well, that is where today's challenge comes in. We're going to go ahead, we're going to recap on how you can tell or how you can remember whether the starting position is 0 or 1, and then we'll take a look at our programming challenge where all these methods or certain methods come together to do something specific. So we'll take a look at that. So let's swing over and get ready to wrap this up. So maybe you're writing out code in the middle of the exam and you're trying to remember, does it start at 0 or does it start at 1? Hopefully these tips will help you. If it's a global function such as left, right, mid, its start position is index 1, you're simply using a key word. If it's part of the string class, meaning you have to use a dot such as substring or IndexOf, it's going to have a start position of 0. Now you may be saying, but what about dot length? That's part of the string class and it starts at 1. Well, length is getting the total amount of characters and is the exception to the rule. For example, you may have seen on a website, your password must be 8 characters long. It would seem really silly for a user to say, oh, they start counting at 0. Most users have no knowledge about computer science, so they're not going to know that they need to type in a character that's 9 characters long instead of 8 characters long. So length is the exception to the rule. All right, let's take a look at our challenge using the string methods that we learned today. So the challenge, break down a full name into its individual parts and display each one on its own. So we got to create a procedure that accepts a person's full name, their first, their middle, and their last as a string parameter. Then we need to extract and print the name parts. We got to print the first name, the middle name, and the last name, each on its own line, word by word. So we're going to print the first name on the first line, middle name on the second line, and then the last name on the third line. So let's swing over to VB.net and let's code this out. So here's the solution coded out. Maybe you gave it a try and maybe you got stuck, and let's take a look at the solution. So let's see it run so we can see the expected output we're supposed to get. So I'm going to use herb computer science as my test data that I have here. So go ahead and run our program. So I'm going to type in herb computer science and it should print herb computer science on its own line with no spaces. And it does. It works perfectly there, and it should work for any name. So let's take a look at this procedure. So we accept, I named my parameter in, the letter in, and then I created some variables so you can see how this works. So I have first, middle, last, but I need to know where space 1 and where that second space is. Getting the first name is pretty easy, but it's the middle and the last name that can get a little tricky. So I do index of to get the location of the first space. Once I know where the first space is, I can start looking for that second space. I'm looking for a space, but I'm starting at the next index over after the first space. So I know where the two spaces are, and that is the key to solving this problem. So for the first name, I'm going to use left. I'm going to work with string in, which is the name, Herb Computer Science, and I'm going to go to a length of space 1. Well, space 1 is 3, because remember, index of works off the 0 index, so 0, 1, 2, 3. Well, I want to go a length using left of 3. Start at E, 1, R is 2, B is 3. But what if I did 4 letters? So let's say I tack on a letter. Where would this index be for space, for the first space? It would be index 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, and then this space right here that I can't highlight, there we go, is index 4. So I'm going a length of 4. So that is why first will always work. Now, for the middle name, I'm going to use mid. I need to start, or I'm working with the in string. I want to start at space 1 plus 2. Why am I starting with plus 2? Well, I know this first space is located in index 3. But I'm starting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This letter C starts at position 5. Where am I going to, or what is my length I'm going to? Space 2 minus space 1 minus 1. So I know space 1 is at index 3. Space 2 is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. So if I start here at 5 and go 9 letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it'll print that extra space. So I need to subtract an additional 1 because I'm starting at index 1, not index 0. And then down here, to get the last name, I'm working with string in, and I need to find that second space plus 2. Why do I need to do that? Because space 2 is 12, and I need to go, I need to start at, that's where I need to start, is position 14, 12 plus 2, and then print the rest of the string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And that is where it starts. And remember, mid with 2 arguments, we identify the string, and then it prints our starting point, and then it prints the rest of the string. If I just do ABC, it'll work, and this will work for any name as long as there's only a single space between each name. Hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to help the channel grow, and we'll see you guys in the next programming video.